I don't know if it's just coincidence or if there's a running trend, but despite there being upwards of half a dozen Pokemon characters in Smash, none of them are popular for whatever reason. I think it might be for the fact that Pokemon are defined by their own internal gimmicks or quirks that may not necessarily translate to strong competitive traits or a very intuitive experience, and no one could fit that description any better than Mewtwo. Having started out in Melee and then brought back in Smash 4 as DLC, Mewtwo's career has been a roller coaster, from borderline trash tier in Melee to an extremely commendable showing in Smash 4, and a somewhat ambiguous placement in Ultimate. There's been a running meme about him in our most recent title regarding a realistic yet also competitively detrimental change that has a lot to do with everyone's ambivalent reception towards him. But at the same time, I myself find it curious why someone like him who has so much going for him isn't very popular in all levels of play. So having spoken with the best Mewtwo player in the world, Mr. Wadi, as well as compiling my own thoughts on it, today I bring you why no one plays Mewtwo. Mewtwo has always been an unconventional character, even down to his appearance. I know that doesn't really amount to much, considering how one of the game's fighters is a literal dog, but even in Pokemon, Mewtwo's design looks really weird in contrast to some of the really popular ones like Rayquaza, Dialga, etc. Granted, that's because Mewtwo is an artificial being spawned off Mew's DNA, but I digress. In Smash, Mewtwo's weird feel extends to all facets of his gameplay, which has a lot of influence on his viability in tournament play, as he fills a lot of different archetypes depending on how you look at him, and he has a little something for everyone. That also explains why people have a hard time identifying what kind of playstyle resonates with him the most. Much like our latest why no one plays character Sephiroth, Mewtwo is a polarizing character, arguably more so than the one-winged angel himself. While having a very tall frame reminiscent of heavyweight fighters, he's one of the lightest characters in the game. The same weight as Pikachu in fact, which is hilarious because, believe it or not, in his game of origin, Mewtwo weighs 269 pounds at base, making him canonically the heaviest among the Pokemon in Smash, with Charizard only weighing just under 200. So there's a bit of inconsistency in that regard. Interestingly, Mewtwo was even lighter at one point, being tied with Fox at 77 units of weight before going up to 79 in version 3. To offset this, his overall mobility ranks among the best in the game in terms of speed. His initial dash and run speed are in the top 10 fastest, and his air mobility is rivaled by very few, having no trouble maneuvering throughout a stage. The only thing he doesn't have going for him is that he's a floaty character. The first noteworthy weapon in Mewtwo's arsenal is his effective range, rivaling that of sword fighters, or in some cases exceeding them. Any attack that makes use of his tail has extensive coverage in their respective areas. Attacks like up tilt, forward tilt, down tilt, back air, and up air easily outranging the majority of the cast, and it comes with equal speed and or power to boot. Mewtwo has what I like to call pseudo-heavy damage, where you deal almost as much, if not just as much damage as a heavyweight character, just without the insane KO power next to it. Virtually all of Mewtwo's non-combo starters have base damage hovering around 12 to 13%. Factoring in the 25% multiplier from move scaling and 1v1, a few good hits can rack up 40% or more. And on the subject of damage, let's not forget his jab, notorious for dealing at minimum 20 to 30% even with SDI. Mewtwo has absolutely no trouble getting you to kill percent, and even less trouble threatening a stock thanks to a myriad of different ways he can banish you to the Shadow Realm. Having arguably the best combination of throws in the game, Mewtwo is a combo throw in the form of his down throw that doubles as a kill setup at higher percents, such as a classic down throw forward air. Up throw retains its excellent kill power from Smash 4, closing at stocks around 140 and only surpassed by Olimar's Blue Pikmin and Charizard's up throw, while back throw ranks among the best in the game for its class. Finally, forward throw is the single highest damaging throw in the game if you land every Shadow Ball, and if DI'd incorrectly, can also be a kill throw in and of itself. Throws aren't the only way he can threaten a stock though. He can also play the straight hit game using attacks like forward air, forward tilt, back air, up air, or Shadow Ball, all covering huge amounts of area with dangerously high KO pressure. If he so chooses, he can also force a hard hit thanks to Confusion functioning as a command grab among other things. In terms of aggression, Mewtwo has to be one of the best characters in the game. Many of his attacks are individually very good and have a wide range of utility that can help him deal with very tricky situations, although that's also a result of his amazing mobility boosting the effective range and coverage of said moves. For example, what distinguishes Shadow Ball from Charge Shot, Aura Sphere, and the like is that Mewtwo is fast enough to follow weaker Shadow Balls to lead into all kinds of follow-ups that Samus, Lucario, or Wii Fit Trainer cannot, although Samus does have uncharged neutral B into grab or dash attack. His diverse and powerful moveset is partly why I find it so perplexing that not many people like to play him. Offensively, you can't think of any situation where Mewtwo would face difficulty. A common issue for most characters with good straight hit kills like Cloud is that they have to find a way to pressure opponents into a panic option or overcommitting on defense to actually finish them off, meaning they can't just spam attacks on their opponents since they can get shielded or parried. Mewtwo can circumvent this without the grab or confusion, having essentially 4 kill throws that make it so you don't want to get grabbed no matter where you are on stage, and a higher percent, Confusion allows for a guaranteed forward air. Mewtwo doesn't have any trouble out-pressuring zoners or projectile campers either. He has his own long-range pressure through Shadow Ball, and he can reflect enemy projectiles through Confusion as well. Disable can cheese a ton of stocks if you get a good read on your opponent, as it's effectively a shield break stun. One other thing that I think sets him apart from someone like Sephiroth is that unlike the latter, Mewtwo has good frame data, having a measurably stronger out-of-shield game and close quarters combat as well. All in all, he has an impressive array of moves and option select that make even top tiers feel lacking in comparison. That's only a fraction of the shining virtues within Mewtwo's repertoire, but we'd be here forever if I kept going in that department. Now to address the actual burning question with the Pokemon, why doesn't anyone play him? For starters, I want to address the elephant in the room that's his hurtbox, because this is a classic case of tunnel vision in my opinion. See, during the transition from Smash 4 to Ultimate, Mewtwo received an additional hurtbox on the edge of his tail, making it extremely easy for him to get hit by attacks, even when it doesn't look like he did. On its own, it may not seem like that big of a deal given how thin it is, but when you account for more than half of his attacks making use of said tail, and offering no intangibility on any of them, Mewtwo ends up outstretching his tail hurtbox more than he would like. Combine that with his dash animation trailing his tail behind them, and you'll find moments where he gets hit by his opponent's back air even when he runs right through them. Now, objectively, this is a big nerf to him. In fact, a bigger hurtbox might be one of the most significant nerfs a character can get. However, attributing one's reason to not playing Mewtwo purely because of his tail hurtbox is absurd. It's true that everyone mentions his tail hurtbox as justification for why they put him in mid-tier or something, but there's more to it than that. Though for the sake of covering all bases, let's break down why the tail hurtbox extension mattered a lot. For one, like Sephiroth, Mewtwo has a very tall and wide frame. On top of that, he's extremely frail, usually dying a good 30 to 40% earlier than some characters. An extra hurtbox on his tail, which he uses for most of his long-range attacks, increases the likelihood of trading with his opponent, resulting in a net loss for him, especially in neutral. So while he does have a lot of range and coverage, if you were to go head-to-head with someone else's attacks, it diminishes the effectiveness of his attacks. Not in terms of how strong they are, that still maintains value, but how safe they are. With the universal reduction to landing lag, most characters have at least a handful of moves they can throw out that are either safe on shield or spammable, so barring select characters, everyone has a passable or better neutral game in Ultimate. That's not what matters. What matters is how safe those moves are. In the case of Mewtwo's, even those attacks are safe on shield, they're not safe to anti-airs or counterattacks. Moreover, the inner hitboxes of Mewtwo's tail attacks deal more damage and knockback than the outer ones, which honestly make no sense according to laws of physics, but yeah, that compounds the possibility of being traded with. In other words, people think Mewtwo's tail hurtbox makes him easier to combo, which is true, but I think what makes the tail so impactful is that it makes it inherently risky for you to use it in combat, even though you have to. That's one aspect that hurts Mewtwo's popularity. The other big issue is that he's a very difficult character to play. He has the same sort of all-purpose moveset as someone like Wolf, but trades consistency for higher reward factor. If played optimally, Mewtwo can exert monstrous amounts of pressure and damage, but that comes at the cost of a near equal if not greater susceptibility to it himself. In layman's terms, Mewtwo is an aggressive character who can't afford to be aggressive due to the kind of environment within Smash Ultimate and by extension the competitive scene. It worked very well in Smash 4 where it was more neutral and spacing focused. In this game, not so much. This tends to result in low and mid-level Mewtwo players opting for a very campy playstyle, charging Shadow Ball to force opponents to approach so they can make use of tools like Confusion and Disable. That's not to say you can't approach and be aggressive with Mewtwo, but without close quarters combat pressure on the level of Fox or Roy, it's not the most favorable option for him unless you really know what you're doing and can manage your risk. As mentioned earlier, his moveset is rich with individually strong attacks. Using them in tandem with each other for the best possible outcome is another matter entirely though. Therein lies the problem. Playing Mewtwo is very unintuitive. Here's an example. Forward air, easily the best forward air in the game. Comes out frame 7, active for 3 frames, really solid range, and while it's not the most disjointed, it gets the job done. Also, it has incredible damage and kill power. This thing is a smash attack built into a forward air. Also, it's -3 on shield. By all accounts, this move is broken. But it's on Mewtwo. You know how Roys love landing with forward air or Fox smashes back air on your shield at the ledge because they fast fall? Mewtwo can't really do that because he floats. If he had Fox gravity, oh my god, Mewtwo's corner pressure would be unfair as all hell. But he doesn't have Fox's gravity. There's also the added concern of his double jump. While it's the longest double jump in the game, the sort of yo-yo nature of it can work for or against you at times. It's good for extending hitboxes, which to his credit works famously with many of his attacks as they have a lot of active frames, but it can be bad for spacing and juggling if you only want to cover a short amount of distance. And unlike Kazuya, who can cancel his double jump momentum by using an aerial, Mewtwo can only cancel his momentum by using a special move or throwing an item. The increased jump height without the ability to cancel momentum using aerials makes it easy for you to overextend on accident. At the very least, someone like Sephiroth, who's also a very polarizing character, still has your normal stuff like a normal double jump, normal physics and whatnot, so even though he still takes a bit of getting used to in terms of its attacks, movement-wise it's pretty intuitive. Third issue is the situational inflexibility. Usually a hallmark of a consistent character is the range of applications for how you can use an attack. Bonus points if that attack can be used both as an offensive and defensive option. While I said earlier that Mewtwo's moveset is versatile, his attacks tend to exist mutually exclusive from each other. Remember when I brought up how Mewtwo doesn't have any issue killing his opponent thanks to a myriad of ways of doing so? That's assuming you're on the offensive to begin with. A major point of weakness for him is that the same offensive options that make him so devastating an advantage can't be relied on to relieve pressure. An example of an offensive move that can work defensively would be something like a sex kick nair, such as Yoshi or Fox, who can break semi-untrue combos with a move that's also used in neutral or advantage. An attack like Pyro's down air is thrown around liberally to catch rolls or to catch you sleeping, but Pyro can use it while landing to challenge anti-airs or juggles and maybe even go for a reversal. Mewtwo's down air or nair can't really be used that way. Speaking of which, any character who tries to use their attacks out of hit stun when landing, such as Lucina using forward air to catch you running towards her after you won a neutral interaction, or Game & Watch using down air while landing, or Kazuya using up air or forward air out of hit stun, or Rob forward air, stuff like that, Mewtwo can't really do himself. He does have forward air, but there's a major blind spot above it and below where you can still smack his head or feet. It's not as all-covering as a Lucina forward air, for example. In other words, his attacks that are designed for neutral, such as confusion, aren't effective in disadvantage. Approach options like rising neutral air don't make for good combo breakers or help you land. You're basically obligated to find roundabout ways to reset back to neutral since you can't fight your way back. Even retaliating while recovering is a risky call. Mewtwo players have a habit of using up air below the stage to hit people on their way up, but that makes it extremely easy for anyone with a half-decent down air to spike him for trying. Additionally, even though Mewtwo has amazing air movement, he doesn't have a whole lot of ways to mix it up. Ness may also have a weird double jump, but he has a fantastic air dodge, he can do the weird PK Thunder ledge snap thingy, he has PSI Magnet and V reverse PK Fire for aerial microsteps, all that junk. Besides confusion stalling him in the air, Mewtwo doesn't have the same kind of mix-ups. The fourth prevailing issue has to do with circumstance. Mewtwo's matchup chart is more or less decent, not the best, but certainly not the worst. However, the matchups he loses to or struggles against just so happen to be some of the most popular characters in the game. He struggles against Palutena, Ness, Cloud, Steve, Joker, Lucina, Aegis, Rob, Roy, Wolf, characters with tons of representation, especially the Swordies. He has the same range as Swordies, but loses to them because he doesn't have disjointed range. Then you have close quarters matches like Joker, Mario, and Fox who can abuse Mewtwo's tall stature by comboing him into oblivion. Granted, he has a few matchups that he does pretty well against, so it's kinda like the Rosalina thing where by virtue of his unique specials and attacks, he can take on some of the game's weirder characters. Pac-Man, Sonic, Snake, Samus, Olimar, Mega Man, characters that routinely give a lot of players trouble. That might explain why Wadi uses Rob and has Mewtwo on deck for more troublesome matchups. That's sort of the weird thing about Mewtwo. He's got good frame data but can't really box with the brawlers. He also has good range but can't really contest Swordies. He's got a lot of offensive tools but can't use them defensively and vice versa. So he's stuck in a weird limbo state where he has a lot of good things going for him, but in the context of his kit and his character, their applicability is hindered in some way, shape, or form. Which sucks. I genuinely believe Mewtwo is a high tier character. Not as good as in Smash 4, but definitely tournament viable. Thing is, he feels like such an awkward character both on paper and in practice that you have to really get into the meat and potatoes of his design to make him work, and all you get is someone who does things in a weird way, but not necessarily better than a regular conventional jack of all trades like Palutena or Wolf. I think there's potential for him to be a worthwhile character to play though. His weaknesses don't fully cancel out his strengths, and he has a lot of strengths. But what do you guys think? Do you believe Mewtwo is underrated as well, or do you think he's not as good as he seems? Let me know in the comments down below. Aside from that, if you enjoyed today's video, it would be awesome if you could leave a like and subscribe. Also, follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other Why No One Plays episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon in the next one. Take care.